SFOTH is one of those classic games that people know about, but either never bothered to play it because they're too busy in Forsaken, or play it but don't stay long enough to get good at it. Main reason being is that there's not a lot of tutorials on SFOTH, especially on Reforged, with many of the new players having to learn the basics all on their own or seek out advice from other members in Reforged Discord server. But I'm here to change that. Today, I will give you the basics of SFOTH and make sure that your kill to death ratio is not in the negatives. Let's begin with the settings because yes, that matters. First off, I do not want to see any of you playing in first person. It makes it impossible to sword fight properly, but also make sure that your camera isn't too close to your character to the point you can only see yourself. I'm looking at you, Retro Dan. But also, make sure it isn't too far away to the point you can't even see your player. My personal favorite spot is here. I can clearly see where my character is and what is going on, but I can also see the enemy to make sure I know where they are. Now, let us talk about swords. I like to put every sword into 4 categories, which are main damage, mobility tools, counters, and mixed. To put it simply, main damage are swords that you always use to kill the enemy. An example of that I can name is Hyacinth or Wind Force. Mobility tools are used to help you get around the map faster. Examples include Illumina and Ghostwalker. Counters are swords that are mainly used to counter other weapons, like how Firebrand is mainly used to counter Ice Dagger. And finally, mixed swords are weapons that are in 2 categories at once, like how Ghostwalker can be used as a mobility tool, but also as main damage. Here's a little chart I made that puts every sword into their respective categories. You can screenshot it if you want. Also, if you're really new and don't know what any of these swords do, then you can always look up the information in the tool info on the bottom right. But with that, let's talk about items. The most important item that you should always have is the touchstone, located over here. Not only does it make it easier to get around the map, but it also helps you to escape fights that you know you're not gonna win. But that doesn't mean you should touchstone every time you see somebody. I'm looking at you, newbies. Another important item to have is the battle armor that has 2 locations. It gives an additional 100 health with no downsides, so getting it is mandatory. The next item I'm expecting you to have is the medkit. It can be only used once, but it fully heals you, which is super important, especially if you get poisoned by Venom Shank. The next item is Shadow Sphere, and it's optional whether you take it or not. It's pretty good at ambushing, but if you learn the skills like Illumina Flying, then it's not really necessary. Slate Skin is an item that gives you 150 additional health, but makes you go really slowly. The Shield Sphere makes you invincible to any attacks when used, but it is really useless since it can be countered easily with Earth Splitter, or if the person is just patient enough to wait for the effect to run off. Finally, the Flame Orb is just Shield Sphere, but it does damage to your opponent. But do note that you can still die while using the Flame Orb since it doesn't fully negate damages from weapons. I once again have a video that details what each item does, except for the Flame Orb. But let's move on to the basics of sword fighting, alright? Whenever you're fighting somebody, don't go straight towards them since it will always get you dead. Instead, try to attack them from the side, preferably to the right to be as far away from the sword as possible. Another thing you need to know is lunge timing. All of you know that you can lunge by pressing twice, but you can time it so that you attack the enemy when your sword is lunging to get the most reach and damage to the enemy. One thing some people do is jump before lunging, but that's not a requirement since you can get kills without jumping at all. Another important tip is flicking. It's basically moving your screen quickly to the left and right to deal more damage as soon as you know that your lunge is gonna hit somebody. It's pretty important to make sure that you kill anybody with just one lunge, and you can even kill somebody with a wooden sword using that trick. One thing about sword fighting is that you have to search for a weak spot in your enemy. The fights usually consist of the two sword fighters circling each other until one of them finds an opportunity to lunge. But remember, you can't just learn from listening to me yap in a video. You have to apply them while sword fighting. First, try to fight people in Reforged, and when that gets too easy, try joining a dueling Discord server like mine. My Discord server is designed for new players or intermediate sword fighters trying to get better at the game, so if you're interested, the link will be in the description. But if you became too good for my server, then you can join Blade Masters or join Reforged dueling tournaments that they host once in a while. But do know that if you're joining Reforged dueling tournament, you'll be going up against the best of the best players, so don't expect to immediately win. I know damn well since it took me multiple months and multiple losses to win one. Also, all of the decent dueling games are dead, so if you want to duel somebody, you gotta ask them in a Discord server to then join such dueling games. But I highly, and I mean highly, discourage you from playing other quote-unquote sword fighting games, like custom duels, classic duel, or sword clash. Since the first one is full of edators and unoptimized skins that will make your PC explode, the second one is full of iPad babies, and the third one has a bunch of people whose only tactics is auto-clicking and spam jumping. By the way, just a little thing, but there's two kinds of dueling games. Linked-only games like Blade Masters or Sword Fighting Facility, which just like in its name, allows you to only have the linked sword. And kid dueling, like Death Before Dishonor, which allows you to get any sword from IV. Now that you know the basics of sword fighting, let's talk about tips and tricks for Reforged, since SFOTH is not all about sword fighting. The most important tip to learn is Illumina flying, and I'll try to explain it as simply as possible. I recommend you go to a high place like the red portal, the blue portal, or the yellow one. It's yellow, not white, goddammit! How do you see white in there? It's yellow! It's like yellow! Yellow! Anyways, make sure that you have two Illuminas and then lunge and jump at the same time while moving forward. And after the lunge on your first sword is done, switch to your second Illumina and lunge. Then after lunging with the second Illumina, switch to your first one and lunge. And then just repeat that until you get where you want. But try your best to time it and also practice. You can be a bit more accurate where you stop by using Ghostwalker to stop yourself and align where you want to fall. But make sure you switch to your main damage mid-air after equipping Ghostwalker if you're ambushing somebody, since somebody slowly falling towards you is much more noticeable than someone falling normally and immediately eviscerating you. Now that you know how to Illumina fly, you can do a little trick where you rapidly change your direction while flying to confuse your enemy on where you are. Just move your camera quickly before you launch your Illumina. Also, homework! I want you to practice Illumina flying starting from the Windforce area and finishing at the Jet Boots place and slowly working your way all the way to the Ice Dagger area. But if you think that Illumina flying doesn't last as long as you want it to, then do not fret, since there's a technique using two Illuminas and the Ancient Illumina, where you launch your first two Illuminas and then lunge with your Ancient. Let me just give you an example. A neat trick you can do is to get on a boost pad and use Ancient to go really high up, which could be a good starter for Illumina flying. Also, a little tip, but if someone is either constantly on the jump pad or on the conveyor belt, then it's not worth it to try and kill them since it is almost impossible to do so. That's about all of the basic tricks I know in SFOTH. If there's any more that you would like to mention, then make sure to comment them down below. Now let's talk about streaking. What is streaking? Well, it's basically getting a bunch of kills without dying once, and it's a huge part of SFOTH. The most common loadout people have for the killstreak is Ghostwalker as main damage, 2 Luminous for mobility, Firebrand and Earthsplitter as counters, and a bunch of medkits. But that loadout is the vanilla and best working one, and you can always try out different ones. Now that you have your loadout, the best way to make sure that your killstreak is recognized is by recording it. You can use OBS or any recorder that your laptop or PC has. It's best to start the killstreak with 0 kills and 0 deaths, and start them off in the safe zone, also called the locus. From there, keep on recording and getting kills until you die, and depending on the killstreak, you can get some neat rewards. Now a couple of tips I can name is this. It's always best to ambush your enemies. If they're aware that you're nearby, then it's best not to go for them. I like to call these people paranoid because they always stay in one place, moving around very small distances, and spam lunging while turning around frantically. Another tip is know your targets. If you know that the person you're going for is a new player that can't fight back easily, then go ahead and kill them. But if they are a decent player, then it's best to avoid them. The next thing is, if you failed an ambush, then it's not recommended to continue trying to kill them since there's a high chance you will die. Also, remember that you can always take breaks in the locus. Just make sure that you're still recording. And finally, remember that streaking is all about patience. Usual runs will last anywhere from 30 minutes to multiple hours, depending on how high of a kill streak you're trying to go for, with some of the streaks being 4 hours long. Now addressing the elephant in the room, what about mobile players? Well, I played Reforged on my tablet for a little bit, and all I can say is, you're fucked. Not only was it impossible for me to move my camera when I was double tapping to launch, but no matter how much I tried, I couldn't Illumina fly at all. I genuinely do not know how anybody plays like this. So if you're thinking about playing Reforged, then please get a laptop. But that's about all I can say for this tutorial. If there's anything I've missed or some misinformation that I've told, then do please tell me in the comments. This was a very special video specifically for RetroDan, and with that, I'll see you somewhere on Saturday. Bye bye.
You're gonna make a sword fight tutorial specifically for me. I'm gonna cry. That's how you know that I'm bad, when people are like, I'm gonna make a tutorial for you. That's how you know you're washed. I'm so washed.
Also, shout out to APOC for being an awesome friend and also mentioning me in a video. Yeah, shout out to APOC. Bye bye.